Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. Big old dump of information today. A lot of interesting stuff came out in the news. Stuff I wanted to share with you. To kick it off, this is NBC News, and our buddy Mark Zuckerberg back in the news again. Big surprise there. Headline: Mark Zuckerberg leveraged Facebook user data to fight rivals and help friends, leaked documents show. Facebook leaders seriously discussed selling access to user data, and privacy was an afterthought. I don't know why this, comes as a surprise to anybody. I mean, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just me. But this just keeps happening over and over and over again with him and his company here, where we find out that pretty much everything they do is in their own and only their own best interest when it comes to their users, and that we are all pretty much traded like a commodity, and we are the product for Facebook, as a matter of fact, and we give them all of our information willingly, and then they turn that around and sell it. Leaked internal Facebook documents show that the plans to sell access to user data were discussed for years and received support from Facebook's most senior executives, including CEO Mark Zuckerberg, the Chief Operating Officer, and the Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg. This article is by Olivia Solon and Cyrus Farivar. Anyway, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg oversaw plans to consolidate the social network's power and control competitors by treating its users' data as a bargaining chip, while publicly proclaiming to be protecting that data, according to about 4,000 pages of leaked company documents largely spanning 2011 to 2015 and obtained by NBC News. The documents, which include emails, web chats, presentations, spreadsheets, and meeting summaries. One of the things that suck at high-tech companies, everything you say or do is recorded, especially if you want to do bad shit. Show how Zuckerberg, along with his board and management team, found ways to tap Facebook's trove of user data, including information about friends, relationships, and photos, as leverage over companies it partnered with. This is insane. In some cases, Facebook would reward favored companies by giving them access to the data of its users. In other cases, it would deny user data access to rival companies or apps. Yeah, this is interesting because this is where it starts to get really murky, right? Because is Facebook a platform or are they a media company? Because if they're a platform, then all of this stuff, I mean, there's just so many implications here, right? Because if you're a media company, then there's certain legal expectations that come with being like a media company. You have to follow certain rules and things, and if you're just a platform, then there's this whole issue with censorship and everything else that's going on too. This is a mess. For example, Facebook gave Amazon extended access to user data because it was spending money on Facebook advertising and partnering with the social network on the launch of its Fire smartphone. In another case, Facebook discussed cutting off access to user data for a messaging app that had grown too popular and was viewed as a competitor, according to the documents. And it's funny because didn't we see some of this same kind of shit with Internet Explorer and back in the early days with between Apple also and Microsoft? All the while, Facebook was formulating a strategy to publicly frame these moves as a way of protecting user privacy. And that's the sick part, right? Because while he was telling us and Congress and everybody how they were going to, protect our data and stuff much more and make it much more secure, they were just using it as a tool to make it easier for them to use it as leverage. Private communication between users and increasingly important, as Zuckerberg said, is increasingly important, Zuckerberg said in a 2014 New York Times interview. Anything we can do that make people feel more comfortable is really good. Yeah, because we're hoovering all that shit up so we can use it against you. But the documents show that behind the scenes, in contrast with Facebook's public statements, the company came up with several ways to require third-party applications to compensate Facebook for access to its user data, including direct payment, advertising, spending, and data sharing arrangements. While it's not unusual for businesses that are working together to share information about their customers, Facebook has access to sensitive data that many other companies do not possess. Yeah, but we freely give it to them. They just, they put a field in there and we all just feel the need to fill it in. Facebook ultimately decided not to sell the data directly, but rather to dole it out to app developers who were considered personal friends of Zuckerberg or who spent money on Facebook and shared their own valuable data, the documents show. Facebook denied that it gave preferential treatment to developers or partners because of their ad spending or relationship with executives. The company has not been accused of breaking the law. Well, there again, what law would they be breaking? It's, yeah, yeah, this is an existential threat, folks, to your, we need a law or something that says that our data is ours and it belongs to us. Because right now it belongs to Facebook. And that's an issue. And I don't know what the hell to do about it, but nobody in Congress seems to give a shit. Nobody that makes laws seems to give a shit. And the FCC certainly doesn't seem to give a shit. So here we are. In other news, this is from Going Green. Quartz is the publication. The urban farming revolution has a fatal flaw. I'm hoping this circles back to something I like to talk about, but commercial urban agriculture in New York City has provided questionable environmental gains and has not significantly improved urban food security. These are the findings of a recent case study of New York City, which shows that despite the fanfare over commercial urban farming, it will need a careful reevaluation if it's going to play a sustainable role in our future food system. The rise of commercial controlled environment agriculture, or CEA, comprised of large-scale rooftop farms, vertical and indoor farms, is a bid to re-envision cities as places where we could produce food more sustainably in the future. Proponents see CEA as a way to bring agriculture closer to urban populations, thereby increasing food security and improving agriculture's environmental footprint by reducing the emissions associated with the production and transport of food. And that's kind of the idea, right? Is like, okay, well, if we produce it in a city or real close to the city, we can pick it when it is, or grow it close to a city. We can pick it when it's closer to being ripe, which is a good thing from the standpoint of nutrition and things like that. But you won't have all these incurred costs with sticking it on tractor trailers and freight trains and things like that, airplanes even, and sending it over land to get it to where the consumer is. But the researchers of the new paper wanted to explore whether these theoretical benefits are occurring in reality. They focused on New York City, where CEA has dramatically increased in the last decade, looking at 10 farms that produce roof and indoor grown vegetables at commercial scales. They investigated how much food the farms are producing, who it's reaching, and how much space is available to expand CEA into. They found that the biggest of these 10 commercial farms is around a third of an acre in size. Most are on roofs spread across New York City, and some are inside buildings and shipping containers. Mainly, these farms are producing impressive amounts of leafy greens, such as lettuce and herbs. Some also produce fish. That's a really cool subject, too. Farm fish and versus... because they're going to have to come up with something with fish, too, because they're going to overfish the oceans eventually. And we got to quit doing that. So, but while rooftop farms rely on natural sunlight to feed the crops, indoor farms use artificial lights. These farms potentially have a greater energy footprint even than conventional outdoor farms. researchers say, challenging the assumption that urban farms are less impactful than conventional ones, right? So when you go out in a piece of dirt way out in the middle of God's country and you plant something, you have this great big nuclear reactor in the sky that provides the energy that's needed to create the light and for the photosynthesis and everything to happen. However, when you do this in a building, you have to do it with LED lights or big metal halide lights or something like that, because the plants still need that energy. The difference is it's piped in. And because it's piped in, now it's going to have to go through something like a meter. It's going to come in as electricity, and it's going to power, these lights. So there's definitely an offsetting there in that when you do that consideration. Some farms also embraced high-tech systems such as wind, rain, temperature, humidity detectors, and indoor heating to enhance growing conditions in environments that aren't naturally suited to agriculture. These elevate the energy costs of food produced and may be giving CEA an unexpectedly high carbon footprint, the researchers say, right? Because currently the way we produce electricity, to get the density to make it worthwhile, you have to burn some sort of carbon fuel to do it. And I guess, solar's getting close. It's on parity, but not enough of it exists yet. So until we start using nuclear reactors and get rid of the silly shit that we're doing and start getting up on the nuclear scale and efficiency, which is where we really need to be, this is not going to change. But it could absolutely change if you can change the energy dynamic. So that's what I was hoping it would circle back to. Furthermore, the predominantly grown foods such as lettuce aren't of great nutritional value for the urban population. Yeah, you can't live on it. Especially those threatened by food insecurity. Most produce from CEAs is sold at a premium, something that partly reflects the cost of the real estate used to grow the food. Consequently, that produce is typically grown for high-end food stores and restaurants, meaning it's unlikely to reach low-income urban populations who need it most. The researchers also think it's unlikely that CEA, which currently occupies just 3.09 acres in New York City, could expand into the roughly 1,864 acres they estimate is still suitable for urban farming in New York City. The rising cost of real estate might put these urban acres beyond the reach of new farming startups, they think. These companies also face increasing competition from a growing number of farms springing up on the outskirts of cities where land is cheaper and there's space to produce more food while also benefiting from urban proximity. And that's kind of the way that the market dynamic should work out, right? You should, and yes, right now they're going to sell this produce at a premium, but they're also figuring out the process and the best methods and things like that for which to do this. And that has to happen. So if someone's willing to foot the bill for it, God bless them, whatever, man, let it go down. But yeah, this harkens back to that same thing. And this is one of the things I say, there's like no problem in the world we can't fix. We can grow food. We can grow protein indoors. We do it all the time. It's not even like a discovered science here or anything. It's pretty established stuff. However, it's not practical to do it. It's not practical from an energy cost standpoint. So again, getting back to, coming full circle, until we figure out how to make enormously dense, abundant green power and make it available, we're always going to keep running into these problems like this, where you're going to have to ship, stuff from, tremendous distances and, continue polluting unnecessarily. We'll get it figured out eventually, though. But science kind of already has, and engineering already kind of has an answer. We just need power, and we need it cheap. Astronomers have found potential life-supporting conditions on the nearest exoplanet. In August of 2016, astronomers from the European Southern Observatory announced the discovery of an exoplanet in the neighboring system of Proxima Centauri. Sounds very Star Trek. Very sexy. This comes from Science Alert. Let's see. The news was greeted with considerable excitement, as this was the closest rocky planet to our solar system that also orbited within its star's habitable zone. Since then, multiple studies have been conducted to determine if this planet could actually support life. Unfortunately, most of the research so far has indicated that the likelihood of habitability are not good. Between Proxima Centauri's variability and the planet being tidally locked with its star, life would have a hard time surviving there. However, using life forms from early Earth as an example, a new study conducted by researchers from the Carl Sagan Institute, we love us some Carl Sagan, has shown how life could have a fighting chance on Proxima b after all. The study, which recently appeared in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, was conducted by Jack O'Malley James and Lisa Kaltenegger, and research associate and the director of the Carl Sagan Institute at Cornell. Together, they examined the levels of the surface UV flux that planets orbiting M-type red dwarf stars would experience and compared that to the conditions on primordial Earth. The potential habitability of red dwarf systems is something scientists have been debated for decades. On the one hand, they have a number of attributes that are encouraging, not the least of which is their commonality. Essentially, red dwarfs are the most common type of star in the universe, accounting for 85% of the stars in the Milky Way alone. They also have the greatest longevity, with lifespans that can last into the trillions of years. Last but not least, they appear to be most likely stars to host systems of rocky planets. This is attested to by the sheer number of rocky planets discovered around neighboring red dwarfs in recent years, such as, and they give a whole shitload of, science nerdy XYZ coordinate type shit. However, red dwarf stars also present a lot of impediments to habitability, not the least of which is their variable and unstable nature. As O'Malley James explained to Universe Today via email, quote, the chief barrier to the habitability of these worlds is the activity of their host stars. Regular stellar flares can bathe these planets, and high levels of biologically harmful radiation. Furthermore, over long periods of time, the onslaught of X radiation and charged particle fluxes from the host stars places the atmospheres of these planets at risk for being stripped away over time if a planet cannot replenish its atmosphere fast enough. Yeah, it's there. That's that whole Goldilocks zone thing too. There's a shitload of stars and a shitload of planets around stars, right? Probably it's immeasurable. It's into the hundreds of billions. But they have to hit that weird cross section where everything just kind of lines up. But I mean, also though, given the vastness of the cosmos, the math isn't, the percentage isn't high. But when you consider how many opportunities there's probably still planets in that habitable zone like ours, surrounding the same type of star, that it's probably in the millions. But have they, evolved enough to, radiate emissions of energy out into space yet or not? So far, seems awful quiet out there. Just saying. In case you ever wondered, here's why it's called Wi-Fi. This comes from the Huffington Post. Do you have Wi-Fi? What's the Wi-Fi password? The Wi-Fi is slow. So slow right now. In 2019, the term Wi-Fi comes up frequently, but do you know what Wi-Fi actually stands for or how it got its name? Huffington Post decided to explore Wi-Fi's origin story. What the hell's going on here? Okay, you may be under the impression that Wi-Fi is short for wireless fidelity, but you'd be wrong. Don't worry, the U.S. military apparently believed this for a while as well. I don't know if the U.S. military believe in something is justification for feeling better about something. I mean, especially if you've ever been in the military, you understand what I mean. It's not a dig. I'm just saying sometimes there's a whole lot of stupid going on. Anyway, it turns out that Wi-Fi stands for nothing. Wi-Fi is a registered trademark of the Wi-Fi Alliance, formerly known as the Wireless Ethernet Compatibility Alliance. It's worth noting that while many people write Wi-Fi, W-I-F-I, the correct spelling is W-I-F-I. Wi-Fi Alliance founding member Phil Bellinger shared the story of the term with Boing Boing back in 2005. It seems the wireless industry was seeking a user-friendly name to refer to technology that adhered to the standards known as IEEE 802.11. We needed something that was a little catchier than IEEE 802.11b, direct sequence. He explained, the Wi-Fi Alliance hired Interbrand to come up with the ideas, and the brand consultancy proposed 10 names, including Wi-Fi, which sounds a lot like hi-fi, aka high fidelity. Quote, the only reason that you hear anything about wireless fidelity is some of my colleagues in the group were afraid. They didn't understand branding or marketing. They could not imagine using the name Wi-Fi without having some sort of literal explanation. Bellinger continued, so we compromised and agreed to include the tagline, quote, the standard for wireless fidelity, along with the name. This was a mistake and only served to confuse people and dilute the brand. Bellinger also noted that wireless fidelity doesn't even mean anything, but was rather a, quote, clumsy attempt to find two words that could go with Wi-Fi, though the tagline, the standard for wireless fidelity, appeared in early communications and swag circa 2000. The Wi-Fi Alliance opted to drop it after about a year or so. Quote, so we were smart to hire Interbrand to come up with the name and logo. We were dumb to confuse and water down their efforts by adding the meaningless tagline. He concluded, please help reinforce the good work that we did and forget the tagline. So there you have it. Though Wi-Fi may have been on a play on hi-fi, the name stands for abso-fucking-lutely nothing. Yeah, see, look at that. I illuminated you today. Our man Elon Musk has a question for super smart AI. The question is, what's outside the simulation? This comes from Futurism. In an interview with MIT researcher Lex Fridman, Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk reiterated his belief that we're all living inside a simulation. When Friedman asked him what his first question would be for the first ever artificial general intelligence system, Musk replied, quote, what's outside the simulation? Musk has floated the possibility that we're all living in a, quote, The Matrix-style simulation for several years during a 2016 interview. Well, you know, that would actually make a lot of strange shit make sense, wouldn't it? I'm just throwing that out there. Musk asserted that there's a 1 in a billion chance we're in base reality. The argument, video games have evolved from Pong to two rectangles and a dot, he told audiences at the 2016 conference, to photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously. Given enough time, those games would become indistinguishable from reality. We've talked about this before on the show. For Musk, human reality amounts to a computer simulation created by greater forces. The extent to which he actually prescribes to this theory is hard to tell, but he has voiced concern about all-powerful AI. He has even argued that AI is far more dangerous than nukes at a different tech conference in 2018. The singularity for this level of simulation is coming soon, Musk replied to a tweet by the official Twitter account of the television show Rick and Morty in 2017. I wonder what the levels above us look like. And I like this hypothesis. I also think it kind of ties into that whole zoo hypothesis too, which is why haven't we found life when it seems to be so pervasive? Again, with so many chances of there being life over the time and vastness of the cosmos, why aren't we picking up anybody else's transmissions of, you know, radio waves or whatever? And so there's this hypothesis that the reason is because we're all in a simulation of some sort, or we're in a zoo. But I think both kind of tweak that same sort of space in your mind, if you want to think about it like that, is that we're all sort of herded into this either planet that because we're being observed, or we're herded into this simulation, and that's what we all are. Is we're actually, you know, just subroutines or subscripts that are running autonomously, or AI subscripts that are running inside a bigger machine. I don't know. I would love to have me some Neo style cool ass Matrix shit I could do, you know. I don't know that I would use it to go beat the crap out of people though. I would find a lot more fun shit to do with it, that's for damn sure. You know, just plug in and learn something and then go do it. Be neat as shit. Speaking of Elon, SpaceX loses Falcon Heavy's center booster to the sea. Aww. So they nailed the landing, right? They landed all three of them. This is from Engadget. Two of them on the beach, one of them out on the boat. But SpaceX successfully landed all three of the boosters after its most recent launch, but it won't be able to reuse one of them. The company lost the core booster that landed on its drone ship called Of Course I Still Love You to rough seas as it was making its way back to Port Canaveral. If you get the chance, I want you to go onto YouTube and check out So you think you can land a rocket, or how not to land a rocket? I think it's what it's called, and it's a compilation video of them trying to land these rockets, both at sea and at land, and these poor ships that they put out there took the brunt of the beating. So they started kind of giving. I think one of them. Well, yeah, this one's called "Of Course I Still Love You" because this poor ship got crashed into so many times by these rockets, not quite sticking the landing. So they lost the booster to rough seas as it was making its way back to Port Canaveral. It was the heavy lift rocket's second launch and the first time SpaceX was able to stick all three boosters' landings. The one that was supposed to land on the barge after the first flight dropped straight into the ocean. Yeah, that one didn't even make the barge, right? That was a tuna seeker. Bloop. Quote, over the weekend, due to rough sea conditions, SpaceX's recovery team was unable to secure the center core booster for its return trip to Port Canaveral as conditions worsened with 8 to 10 foot swells. The booster began to shift and ultimately was unable to remain upright. While we had hoped to bring the booster back intact, the safety of our team always takes precedence. We do not expect future missions to be impacted. So they got caught by some pop-up weather out to sea. Yeah, welcome to doing shit on the ocean. It's a lot more difficult. It's just kind of the way it is, and expensive too. Apple's iOS 13 will include dark mode for iPads and iPhones. This is from Hyperbay. Apple's anticipated iOS 13 update is said to be featuring a new dark mode feature for both iPhone and iPad. Alongside the new dark mode switch, the new software will also come with improvements to the device's productivity and a handful of new features. Apple will be introducing the new dark mode feature across all iOS apps to help users protect their eyes when using their bright phones at night and to be less douchebaggy in the movie theaters. Similar to Twitter's current dark mode option, in addition, the iPad will also receive multi-window support for apps, which will allow for greater multitasking and productivity on the tablet. Other features include new gestures, a 3-finger redo undo feature, as well as font manager and the Mail app, and a bunch of other shit that I probably won't use until it's been around for like 3 or 4 years, which is how I pretty much use everything. But the cool thing is that now they're going to have this option where when your kid's in the back seat of the car and you're driving at night and they turn their phone on, it doesn't look like an alien just landed in your car. California City just launched a basic income trial. Stockton, California, big surprise, will pay 130 residents for 18 months. This goes back to that whole discussion on the concept of things like universal basic income. Stockton, California recently started an experimental basic income program. The concept is simple. 130 residents will receive monthly payments, no strings attached, over the course of 18 months. The first payment was delivered in February. When the experiment is complete, according to the Los Angeles Times, city authorities will pore over how people spent the money and how it changed their lives, resulting in a study that could provide crucial insights into the economics of basic income. Yeah, this is going to be fascinating. Because I don't know that, well, none of the platitudes are true, right? The ever elusive welfare queen, or the people that do that, that came from back in the 80s, was a derogatory term used to describe, mothers on welfare. And largely untrue. And are there people that are going to exploit the system? Yeah, but how many? And are there people already exploiting the system? Yeah, but how many? So it's going to be neat to see how that comes down. Participants aren't exactly getting lifted out of poverty. The city is paying each person $500 each month. It's not enough to change anyone's tax bracket, but Stockton Mayor Michael Tubbs argues that it could grant security to people who are struggling to make ends meet or working several jobs. Quote, I know what it's like to be hungry or to see your mom struggling. Everyone in my neighborhood was always outside playing because their parents were working and they weren't at home waiting for the government to save them. Tubbs told the LA Times, quote, I think I have a special responsibility to elevate policy and solutions that can deal with these issues, but also to change these caricatures we have of people who are no different than anyone else who happen to work in jobs that don't pay well. So yeah, this kind of also seems like these are folks that already have a job, that are already employed. That could get real interesting. Yeah. And I don't think that the 18 months is enough time either, because that's not enough time to see how that's going to impact like the local economy and things like that. It's going to have to be looked at a little more than that for damn sure. So wrapping up here, folks. Last story, and after the the tragedy of Notre Dame yesterday with such a historic and old monument and the fire that ravaged it. One of the cool things that started happening here recently is with the advancement of technology has been the ability to go into these places of antiquity and be able to take like super high resolution 3D scans of the structure inside, outside, and preserve that information. And it's and with the some of the stuff that's happened with monuments and things being destroyed in the Middle East, it's been a lifesaver for at least capturing that information and sort of recording it, and then it can be rendered back into things like virtual reality so that they can still be explored, although virtually, but they still sort of exist in that way, right? So they can still be studied, and they use ultra high resolution photographs of the surfaces, and they mat it all together with the 3D models and things. But luckily, that had happened with Notre Dame, and the good news, we have a highly detailed digital template for how to rebuild it now because of that. And it looks like that's what's going to happen. The initial reports I heard were a little premature, that it was going to be a total loss. It looks like they are going to be able to save a lot of the structure. So thanks to the meticulous work of Vassar art historian Andrew Tallon, every exquisite detail and mysterious clue to the building's 13th century construction were recorded in a digital archive in 2015 using laser imaging. These records have revolutionized our understanding of how the spectacular building was built and could provide a template for how Paris could rebuild. According to Wired, architects now hope that Talon's scans may provide a map for keeping on track whatever rebuilding will have to take place. Isn't that cool as shit? So, in 2015, National Geographic profiled Talon and his unique scanning process, highlighting his digital imaging of the Notre Dame Cathedral. For centuries, the only tools we had to measure medieval buildings and structures were primitive: strings and rulers, pencils and plumb bobs. But by turning to 21st century technology, Talon was able to tease out the secrets of this miraculous structure. Quote, "If I had texts at every point, I could look into the text and try to get back into the heads of the builders," Talon said to Nat Geo. "I don't have it, so it's detective work for me." For his scans of Notre Dame, Talon recorded data from more than 50 locations in and around the cathedral, resulting in staggering 1 billion points of data. Each scan begins by mounting the laser onto a tripod and placing it into the center of the structure. The laser sweeps around the area in every direction, and as it hits a surface, the beam bounces back, recording the exact placement of and surface of whatever buttress or column it landed on by measuring the time it took the beam to return. Every measurement is recorded as a colored dot, combining together into a detailed picture like the color pixels of a digital photograph. Eventually, those millions of dots form a three-dimensional snapshot of the cathedral, and the resulting images are meticulously precise. If the scan is done properly, Talon told Nat Geo, it should be accurate to within 5 millimeters. That's amazing. According to the New York Times, it took less than 1 hour for the fire to spread from the attic of the cathedral and engulf the roof, toppling the central spire. Construction on the cathedral began in the year 1163 and finished in 1345, according to a New York Times piece about the history of the cathedral, and the wooden roof contained historic beams from the year 1220, all of which were destroyed by the blaze. Support for the recovery efforts have begun pouring in, with wealthy Parisians, and companies pledging more than $450 million in donations to restore it. So, it's really kind of cool that they have this methodology now with which to go and capture these things. And I'm hoping, I guess, that if what's happened here with Notre Dame and Paris has taught the world anything, it's that we probably should be expanding the use of this type of technology, especially given what happened, and start recording these places in some sort of order by importance. And I don't mean by importance to, who it's important to. I mean by importance to, this building can burn down, but that building's made of rocks, kind of thing. But that building's in an earthquake-prone area, so maybe that goes up on the list. But there seems to be, to me, there should be some sort of way that you can, build some sort of methodology. But you got to get these things recorded. It's important that we capture this stuff and preserve it, because now this can go back and be studied and looked at. We can't do carbon dating. We can't go in and actually touch the stuff that was destroyed in the fire per se, but the data, this data is better than no data at all, and there's a process by which it can be done. And I don't know, maybe that's a nonprofit somebody should start or something. Maybe it should be me. Nah, I don't think it should be me. Anyway, that wraps up tonight's show, folks. Appreciate everybody listening and checking us out at www.noshitcast.com. The show continues to grow. 100, we're like triple digits growth. It's nuts, like 107% or something like that. But it's all thanks to you and kind of digging what I'm doing here and listening in. But love you. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all next time. Talk to you then. Bye.